Hi, my name is John Birch. I'd like to welcome you into this year's edition of the Ilizarov Readings. I'm sorry that I can't be with you this year, although I've been twice in the past, in 2016 and 2018. I am Assistant Chief of Staff at Texas Scottish Rite Hospital for Children Emeritus, which means that I'm retired. I was also basically the founder and for a long time co-director of the Center of Excellence for Limb Lengthening and Reconstruction at Scottish Rite. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how I first learned about the Ilizarov method and apparatus. The very first time I had any inkling that something of this nature existed was during the time that Jean Dubussy, a wonderful orthopedic surgeon from St. Vincent de Paul Hospital in Paris, in a conference in late 1987 said, wires, with respect to a difficult lower extremity deformity. And of course, those of us here at Scottish Rite had no idea what he was talking about and thinking, how do you fix a complex deformity like this with wires? And that's as far as it went. But in the spring of 1988, my colleague Charlie Johnston encouraged me to go to a one-day, two-day pre-course on limb lengthening that was being hosted by Myron Tashton prior to his annual pediatric orthopedic review. And in that meeting in May of 1988, I saw the most remarkable thing that I had seen in my entire medical career. And that was Professor Ilizarov speaking for 4 hours, showing incredible reconstructive procedures that I knew nobody in North America was capable of doing them. And I came back from Dallas just completely frustrated because I knew that there was treatment here that we needed to be able to provide to our children at Texas Scottish Rite Hospital for Children. At that time, it wasn't possible for me to come to the former Soviet Union, but at the same meeting, I learned about the group of Leco surgeons, and I went to a one-week course in 1988, and then I went back for myself for 6 weeks in 1989 to learn about the Ilizarov apparatus and method from the Leco surgeons. And I owe them all, particularly Mauricio Catania, an eternal gratitude for introducing me to the Ilizarov method and apparatus. They were my earliest mentors. I came back to Dallas after that time and I started a fairly primitive program. I like to think of it in retrospect as a rusty old bicycle with training wheels. But then, through another great good fortune, in early 1990, Mike Samchikov passed through Dallas as part of the Perestroika Glasnost exhibit. And a friend of Texas Scottish Rite Hospital met him and brought him to the hospital because we were doing some of the same thing. And of course, Mike immediately had an impact on the case that I happened to be doing that day. And then we had the great good fortune that he would join us later. It's difficult to imagine that it's 30 years down the road. But Mike Samchikov, his wife Marina Makarov, and then later Alex Sarkashian, all came to us from the Institute. And while I know it was a great loss to the Institute, I truly know that. I'd like you to remember that it was a tremendous benefit to the children at our hospital and around North America and the world to help disseminate the wonderful ideas of Ilizarov's method and the apparatus. When I first started to use the method, I was very, very happy because I was bringing treatment that wasn't available to the children that I was charged to look after. And it was difficult, but it was also a great pleasure and a source of satisfaction. And I had a second goal, and that goal was, at the time, there was quite a bit of pushback in North America about the complexity of the Ilizarov method, and it was too difficult to use, or too painful, or maybe it didn't work. And my goal was that people could say it was either too difficult, too complex, or whatever, but to prove that it was possible, so that whatever they said, they could not say, this is not possible. I have one personal regret, and that is I heard Professor Ilizarov speak, but I never had the opportunity to meet him. I was to meet him during the ASAMI North America, now the Limb Lengthening and Reconstruction Society meeting, but unfortunately he died the previous fall, so I never met him personally. But I am totally in his debt and eternally grateful for the introduction and obvious genius of the method and the apparatus. And I extend that to all the members of the Ilizarov Institute, as well as my own personal mentors from Lecco, Italy, and Mike Samsikoff, Alex Sarkashin, and Marina Makarov. When they joined, they landed on fertile ground, that is Scottish Rite Hospital, which looks after children from the state of Texas without any concern for who can pay, and providing me all the resources that I need to look after children. But those seeds were themselves quite powerful, and they, the three of them, developed the program that became Scottish Rite, and that rickety bicycle with training wheels became a true Russian rocket ship that really, really vault on their shoulders. So I'd like to close by saying thank you very much for everything that you have given me, everything you've given the children that I've had the honor to look after, and I wish you a very successful Ilizarov readings, and I look forward to seeing you personally in the future. Thank you.
My name is George Vito. I am a foot and ankle surgeon out of upstate New York. I was initially introduced to ring fixation in the year 1993-94. I was at a lecture and I saw the rings, and it intrigued me immensely of how the process is being taught and how I could be educated. From that point, I did some research, and I found out that the Ilizarov Institute in Kyrgyzstan was the place to go to learn from the best surgeons in the world. From that point forward, I attended multiple courses in the States, as well as traveled to Kyrgyzstan, Siberia, over 15 times. From that point, I was educated by the best in the world in Siberia and formulated good relationships with the surgeons there, as well as the translators who helped educate us in the transition when we got there. This year is the 100th anniversary of Dr. Ilizarov, and without his wisdom and knowledge and his educational process, many surgeons across the world would not be doing the procedures that we are doing today. I attribute my success tremendously to Dr. Ilizarov in reference to the process of education that he had formulated in Kyrgyzstan, Siberia. I've been there 15 times. Every time I went, the process of education was formulated to achieve our goals of that trip at that time. Initially, I went myself, and then we would bring 5, 6, 10 other surgeons with us as a group twice a year, 3 times a year, to try to advance the profession of podiatry and foot and ankle surgery in the United States. Initially in 1993, there was not a ring fixation put on a foot and ankle by a podiatrist in the United States. However, by 1995, we initially started doing ring fixation in the United States after my journeys to Russia. And from that point forward, training in the United States exploded with ring fixation, to the point of we were doing 8 to 10 courses a year, 1-day, 2-day, 3-day courses. From that point, we are today the mainstay for many procedures, including charcoal reconstruction, trauma, is ring fixation. Dr. Ilizarov was instrumental. He was the pioneer in developing this process and the educational process for us to learn and to teach others in the United States. I attribute my success entirely in the realm of ring fixation to Dr. Ilizarov and to Dr. Shetsov, who in fact succeeded Dr. Ilizarov when he passed. I congratulate the Ilizarov Institute on their success and their continued success of training surgeons. In today's world, where our travel has been limited for a period of time, our journeys to Russia have been suspended. However, we feel in the next 1 to 2 months that this will open up, and once again we can travel to Siberia, meet old friends, establish new friendships, and continue the process of education and to continue the goal of Dr. Ilizarov, which is to help patients and to further the education of ring fixation. Thank you.
Миллион лет назад человек изобрел колесо. Говорят, что это была революция в развитии человечества. Гавриил Абрамович Илизаров изобрел такое колесо для травматологии и ортопедии, выдающееся колоссальное достижение, признанное и получившее развитие в 60 странах мира. Предложенная им конструкция уже более 65 лет носит гордое название аппарата Илизарова. Аппарат доктора Илизарова сделал счастливыми тысячи и тысячи людей, потерявших надежду, которые благодаря волшебному аппарату обрели и подвижности и здоровья. А в Курган я приеду, зови и не зови, и скажу мое сердце утешти, человек перед великою силой любви, возвращающий людям надежды. И так написал Расул Гамзатов в стихотворении Илизарову. Но все же главным памятником гению ортопедии является научный ортопедический центр в Кургане и центре больничный, которые открыли его ученики по всему миру. И в Бангладеш такой центр называется Бари Илизаров ортопедический центр. Расул Гамзатов сравнил доктора с Богом. Знай, в студенте твой перешел бы сам Бог. Если бы ты, не жалея усилий, связь времен, Гавриил восстанавливать мог, словно связки людских сражений. Сегодня мы с вами отмечаем его день рождения. Он с нами, среди нас вдохновляет. Здоровить, работать, идти дальше, идти вперед, не останавливаясь на достигнутом. И я счастлив, что был и остаюсь его учеником великого Илизарова.
This is Professor Gamal Ahmed Hosny from Egypt. I'm a professor of orthopedic surgery, Banha University, Egypt, and the chairman of the Permanent Committee for Academic Promotion in the Egyptian universities for orthopedic surgery. I'm the ex-president of Asami International from 2010 to 2012. And I am the specialty editor of the journal Pediatric Orthopedics. And currently I'm the president of the Egyptian Orthopedic Association. I started my journey with Ilizarov in 1982, which is about 39 years ago from now. My department, Banha University Hospital, at the time when I was just a junior resident, imported Ilizarov apparatus from Russia. And we had registered the first thesis about lengthening by Ilizarov in 1983. And this was before the work done in the Western world at the time. And after the time, I started working by the Ilizarov principles, and all the departments started working. And I started traveling to different parts of the world, to Vienna, to Belgium, to England, and also I visited the Ilizarov Institute many times. Czechoslovakia, at the time it was one country. And we manufactured Ilizarov parts locally in Egypt, and it was very cheap at the time, which helped us to treat many patients, thousands of patients, and to help those people with these problems like non-union, congenital deformities, bone defects, infection. I founded the Al-Haram Center in the Ministry of Health to treat patients for free. And we treated thousands of patients with the methods. We think Ilizarov method is the most important breakthrough in the field of orthopedics in the last century. And it's an honor for me to talk on the occasion of the centennial jubilee of the academician Ilizarov. And my practice currently, after 39 years treating patients with this method, is mainly focused on this method. Because I believe that most of the so-called new advances in the field of limb lengthening, pediatric orthopedics, congenital problems, are based on the Ilizarov law, the law of tension stress. What's more important is the biologic advances invented by Ilizarov. And all the new methods, the so-called new inventions, are based on these biologic laws developed by Ilizarov. Now we are treating many patients with this method, not only in Egypt, all over Egypt now. Egypt is 100 million population, but we transmitted this method to many countries in the Arabic world and different parts in the Middle East. Also, we have trained many doctors to use this method in Egypt and abroad. We had many workshops, and we had many students and doctors working with us to learn this method. And now I think it's a standard method in Egypt, not only in Egypt, but also in the whole Middle East. And I think the potential of this method is a great potential, because we still have many patients who need this method. You know, the lesions like congenital deformities, severe congenital deformities, infection, infected non-union, bone defects, the victims of war and the victims of terrorism, and many other lesions are really, we had them in large numbers in our area. And we count on this method to treat the victims and to improve their situation. We are looking forward in the future to more cooperation with the Ilizarov Institute to help the poor patients and to treat these difficult lesions. We are going to work hand in hand for the sake of humanity and to serve patients all over the world at very low cost. Thank you.
This is Dr. Zang, Secretary General of SiheChina, was a fellow of Ilizarov Center in the important day of 100th anniversary celebration of Ilizarov. Say thanks to Ilizarov Center and share the best wishes from all the Chinese Ilizarov-minded men. Thank you.
今年6月15日呢，是伟大的俄罗斯民族英雄伊尔扎夫教授100年的诞辰。俄罗斯及其世界各国，凡是从事伊尔扎夫的研究临床应用的学者和医生， 都在纪念这一个日子。那么中国呢，作为咱们中国将在6月19号举行一个盛大的会议，就是伊拉克北京诞辰一个人文和学术论坛。同时，我们将在中文的3本杂志上同时举办伊拉克技术专题。那么在此呢，我们感谢伊拉克的技术和方法，造福了成千上万的中国的创伤和肢体畸形残疾病人。这中国人民、中国的医学工作者，感谢伟大的俄罗斯民族，培育了像伊拉克这样的一个伟大的医生。那么在此呢，我也希望中国和俄罗斯通过这一次活动，加深以后的学术交流，加深呢在人文、文化、科研方面的合作。那么祝愿俄罗斯医生、俄罗斯民族，那么在通过伊拉克这次百年活动，在外国境肢体重建、伊拉克技术领域里边，有更大的更好的推进，更大的发展。谢谢。
I extend my felicitations to the surgeons and staff of the Kurgan Institute on the occasion of the birth centenary celebrations of Professor G.A.Ilizarova being held in Kurgan from the 15th of June. I wish I could be there with you. We know that most advances in orthopedic surgery touch upon a small area, but Professor Ilizarov and the Kurgan Institute's work are revolutionary and far-reaching and have touched a very broad area and depth of orthopedic surgery. Many of us have the ability to see and work with great teachers for a short while, but you, the staff and surgeons of Kurgan Institute, are very lucky for having spent so much time with the great Professor Ilizarov. I envy you. It has been one of the privileges of my life to have seen and met this great surgeon on a few occasions, albeit very briefly. I remember the first time, way back 35 years ago, in 1986, I was a young orthopedic surgeon having just finished my residency training at the prestigious KM Hospital in Mumbai. It was located in an industrial suburb of the industrial capital of India. The area was full of textile mill workers who were not very well to do. If I just stepped outside the hospital and looked at the sea of humanity walking by, I saw many people had a limp while walking. Many had deformities, some had contractures and had physical disabilities. But what amazed me was that none of our textbooks devoted much space to describing limb lengthening or the treatment of complex deformities or problems. And none of these people came up on our operation theatre lists. We were told that muscles and nerves cannot regenerate, and nor can bones. As a matter of fact, one of my beloved and great teachers once joked. He said that bone is not filled with red marrow, but is filled with black ingratitude. With this backdrop, imagine our pleasant surprise when we heard Professor Ilizarov, who came to Mumbai in October 1986 at a conference in tropics, and he gave his wonderful talk. All of us young surgeons were falling out of our chairs in excitement on seeing Professor Ilizarov open this door to a whole new magical world. It's as though he opened a window to this incredible opportunity and magical opportunity of bone regeneration and limb reconstruction. It would be several more years before I saw him again in Baltimore in 1989. And then interestingly, when I came back from the US in October 1989, Professor Ilizarov came back to India. I forced my way into the car in which Professor Ilizarov was traveling from the airport to the hospital to give a talk. And I requested him to give me an interview. And I remember he joked, "Are you a surgeon or are you a journalist?" But he was kind enough to give the interview. And I published the interview on several leading newspapers and magazines of India way back in 1989. It was my great privilege to have gone back to Kurgan, to go to the origin of this technique at Kurgan in 1990 and 91, and to meet Professor Ilizarov, to hear and learn from him and from the great teachers of the Kurgan Institute. I remember I badgered him for a special instructional course on hip reconstruction, even though I was supposed to do a basic Ilizarov course. He agreed. He was very kind to me. The Kurgan Institute has been kind to me all these years. It has given me nothing but knowledge, kindness, friendship and affection. I was sad but also very proud and privileged to be invited to go back to Kurgan in 1992 for the conference that commemorated his passing away. It was my privilege to lay a wreath on his tombstone and pay my homage to him. Over the years, the Ilizarov techniques have spread all over the world. I'm particularly proud and satisfied about the fact that I learned the Ilizarov techniques. It has given surgeons like me in all corners of the world the ability to treat really complicated limb deformities and limb shortening problems, regardless of the patient's ability to pay, regardless of our resources, regardless of whether the patient is a prince or a pauper, regardless whether our institute is large or small. We do not have to depend on university departments or the industry. The Ilizarov techniques and the Ilizarov fixator have opened up a vast possibility for us to treat many problems in orthopedic surgery. Over the years, the Kurgan Institute and associations like the Assami International and LLRS have continued to spread the word of the Ilizarov technique worldwide. The technique continues to grow and continues to help humanity. I'm particularly proud of being able to publish and edit the Journal of Limb Lengthening and Reconstruction since November 2015. It is the only English language international journal dedicated to the science of the Ilizarov techniques and limb reconstruction in all its newer forms. It is indeed a privilege that we are having a special section devoted to the memories of Professor Ilizarov by some of his most famous students in the coming edition of the JLLR. I would request you to look up this journal on the web at www.jlimblenthrecon.org. Finally, I wish I could be with you all in Kurgan on this joyous occasion of the birth centenary celebrations of Professor Ilizarov. Please accept my good wishes, and I hope and pray that you continue to do human service to the world of orthopedics and limb reconstruction for several decades to come. Thank you.